I never thought I'd see Michael again. Not after the way he left, not after those nights I sat awake wondering how a man could walk out on a woman and a 6-year-old child like we were yesterday's garbage. He walked out on us, saying I wasn't good enough because I lost my job. That's when he started cheating with his secretary, Vanessa. But life, as I've learned, has a cruel sense of humor. When Emily handed me her wedding invitation, her eyes were bright, her smile wide. "Mom," she said softly, "I think I should invite Dad. I know what he did, but he's still my father." I didn't say a word for a long time. I just stared at the golden letters spelling out my daughter's future and the ghost of my past. In that moment, I realized something. Forgiveness isn't a choice you make once. So I smiled, pretending my heart wasn't breaking. "Of course, sweetheart," I said. "Invite whoever you need to feel complete." The weeks before the wedding passed like a dream. Emily's dress fittings, the florist appointments, the late-night talks over tea, it was all perfect. She looked like an angel in her lace gown, radiant and innocent, with her heart wide open to love. I couldn't help but think how I once looked like that too. Years ago, standing at an altar, holding Michael's hand, believing in promises that never stood a chance. Sometimes, I wonder what went wrong first. Was it the long nights at his office? The way he stopped saying good morning? Or maybe it was the silence, the kind that eats away at love until it's just dust. When I caught him cheating with his secretary, Vanessa, I didn't scream. I didn't throw things. I just stood there, holding my breath, realizing that the man I loved was already gone. He didn't even fight for us. He just said, "Grace, you'll survive. You're strong." That's what they call you when they're about to abandon you. The morning of the wedding, I woke before sunrise. I brewed coffee, stared at my reflection, and tried not to think about him. My hands trembled as I fixed my hair. Not because I still loved him, no, but because part of me feared he'd show up and ruin what Emily deserved. I prayed he'd stay away. At the church, guests arrived in waves of laughter and perfume. Emily was radiant, glowing beside her bridesmaids. Then, as the music swelled and I turned toward the entrance, I saw him. Michael! And beside him that woman, Vanessa, tall, sleek, wrapped in a red dress that screamed arrogance. Her hand clung to his arm like possession, not affection. He smiled, that same rehearsed smile I once fell for. "Grace," he said softly, as if we were old friends. "You look well." I wanted to reply, "You look like a man who finally aged without a soul to keep him young." But I didn't. I simply nodded and walked past him. During the ceremony, I sat quietly in the second pew, watching Emily's eyes shimmer with tears as she said her vows. Michael sat across the aisle, pretending to wipe his own, his new wife clutching a designer clutch like it was a shield. When the priest asked, "Who gives this woman to be married?" Michael stood first. "I do," he said confidently. And for a split second, the world blurred. He what? That man hadn't given Emily a single dime for her wedding. Not for her college. Not for her birthdays. I opened my mouth to speak, but then Emily looked at me, her eyes pleading, her smile fragile. I swallowed the truth and stayed seated. At the reception, the laughter returned, but my heart didn't join in. Michael and Vanessa moved from table to table, shaking hands, smiling like celebrities at a charity gala. He even clinked his glass for a toast. "To my beautiful daughter," he began. "To her mother, Grace, for raising her so well. I'm proud of the woman she's become, and grateful to have been part of her journey." The crowd clapped. Cameras flashed. And all I could think was, part of her journey? No, Michael. You were the storm she learned to walk through. I looked at Emily. She smiled awkwardly, but I saw it, that tiny crack in her expression. Maybe she finally realized the performance unfolding before her eyes. Vanessa beamed beside him, pretending the applause was for her too. I just sat there, quietly sipping my water. Because I knew something none of them did, the entire wedding had been paid for with my life savings. The house I sold, the jewelry I pawned, the years I spent cleaning offices while others slept. And soon they'd know it. Because truth, no matter how long it hides behind smiles and diamonds, always walks through the door when you least expect it. Dinner had just begun, but I could barely taste the food on my plate. My eyes kept drifting to the far end of the hall. He looked older. Yes, the kind of older that money can't hide. His once dark hair was thinning, and there were lines near his mouth that spoke of years spent pretending to be happy. Vanessa, of course, looked the opposite, young, polished, shimmering under the chandeliers like she'd bathed in vanity itself. Emily sat between David and me, smiling nervously as guests whispered. I could feel her heartbeat from across the table. Then came the moment I dreaded. Michael stood up, champagne glass in hand. His voice carried across the room, confident, charming, still rehearsed like every lie he'd ever told. First, I'd like to thank everyone for being here today. My daughter, Emily, she's the pride of my life. I'm honored to have walked her down the aisle. The room clapped. I didn't. He continued. You know, it's not easy raising a child. It takes love, guidance, and sometimes sacrifice. I'm proud to say I've given Emily everything she needed to become the woman she is today. I almost choked on my drink. I wanted to stand up and scream that he hadn't even given her a call on her graduation day, that I'd worked 3 jobs to buy her first laptop, that I'd patched her shoes so she wouldn't feel poor. But I didn't. He kept going, each sentence heavier than the last. And of course, none of it would have been possible without my wife, Vanessa. She's been like a mother to Emily in so many ways. I watched as Vanessa smiled sweetly, oblivious to the storm about to break. Emily's fingers tightened around her fork. Her lips trembled. I knew that look. It was the same one I wore the day I discovered Michael's affair. That mix of disbelief, hurt, and a dawning realization that the world you trusted had just lied to your face. Before I could reach for her hand, David, my son-in-law, stood. His tone was calm but sharp. Excuse me, sir, he said, looking straight at Michael. If I may ask, who paid for this wedding? The room fell silent. Even the band stopped playing. Michael blinked, caught off guard. Well, he chuckled nervously. I mean, we all did in some way. Family effort. David didn't smile. That's strange, because I remember signing the final check with Grace's name on it. Every head turned. Vanessa's smile cracked. And Michael! Oh, Michael! His face turned the color of the wine in his glass. Is that true? Someone whispered. Grace paid for everything, another asked. Emily's eyes filled with tears. Mom, she whispered. I didn't want to humiliate him, not on my daughter's wedding day. But I also couldn't let lies sit at the table where truth had bled for years. So I said quietly, it's fine. I wanted my daughter's day to be beautiful. That's all that matters. But my calmness, my refusal to gloat, only made the truth louder. The applause that followed wasn't for Michael anymore. It was for me. He stormed out minutes later, Vanessa struggling to follow in her heels. The night air outside was sharp, cold, unwelcoming. I thought that was the end of it. But fate wasn't finished yet. I heard the scream before I saw it happen. Vanessa collapsed on the marble steps, clutching her stomach, gasping for air. Emily cried out, "Call an ambulance!" Michael panicked, kneeling beside her. "She's pregnant!" he shouted. "Please, someone help!" My heart clenched. Not because I cared for him, but because no woman deserves to suffer like that. I rushed to her side, steadying her head. "Breathe slowly," I whispered. "Help is coming." Michael looked at me, desperate, eyes red. "Grace, please don't let her die. Please." I stared at him, this man who had once left me begging at the door while he packed his bags to run off with another woman. And yet, I said nothing cruel. I simply looked him in the eye and said, "You left me when I needed you most. Now you know what it feels like to be left standing in the cold." Still, I held Vanessa's hand until the ambulance arrived. Because that's the difference between people like him and me. I help, even when it hurts. Hours later, after they took her to the hospital, I stayed behind to clean up spilled champagne and scattered petals. That's when Vanessa's sister came to find me. "Mrs. Parker," she said softly, "Vanessa wanted me to thank you. And she asked me to tell you something." I raised an eyebrow. She said Michael's been lying to everyone. He's broke. The car was rented, the jewelry was fake, and he's been living off her savings. I froze, letting that sink in. So that was it. The empire he built on my heartbreak had finally collapsed. And for the first time that night, I smiled. Not from revenge, but from release. When the crowd thinned and the music softened, Emily walked to the microphone, tears in her eyes. "I just want everyone to know," she said, her voice trembling but clear, that this entire wedding was possible because of one woman, the woman who never left me, who gave up everything for my happiness. Mom, you are the real queen of this wedding. The hall erupted in applause. People stood, clapping, cheering, crying. I stood too, shaking, overwhelmed. David wrapped his arm around Emily as she beckoned me to the dance floor. And there, under the soft lights, I danced with my daughter, slow, gentle, proud. Through the glass doors I saw him, Michael, standing outside in the rain watching. His face was pale, his hands in his pockets, his perfect life unraveling right before his eyes. After the wedding, 3 days passed before I saw him again. I thought maybe Michael would disappear, like he always did, leave behind the mess and the whispers, the same way he left Emily and me years ago. It was early evening when I heard the knock on my door. I almost didn't answer. I was folding laundry, humming softly, the faint smell of lavender in the air. Peace had finally become a habit, but the knocking didn't stop. Slow, steady, desperate. When I opened the door, there he was. Michael. Rain clung to his hair, his eyes were red, his clothes crumpled like he hadn't slept in days. He looked smaller somehow. The proud, polished man from the wedding was gone. What stood before me was what pride leaves behind when it's done destroying. Grace, he said softly, please can I come in? I hesitated. Then quietly I stepped aside. He sat at the table, the same spot where he'd once signed the divorce papers. I don't even know where to start, he began, voice shaking. I made a fool of myself. Everyone knows now about the lies about Vanessa. She left me, Grace, took what was left of her savings, and went to her sister's place. Now I have nothing. His words fell heavy, but my heart didn't. I just stared at him, calm, almost detached. You still have your pride, I said softly. That should keep you company. He winced. I deserve that. I deserve worse. He rubbed his face inside. I thought I was chasing happiness, but all I did was run from the one person who ever loved me without reason. I told myself money and youth would make me feel alive again, but it only made me empty. He looked up at me, eyes wet, trembling. Grace, how do you do it? How do you still stand after everything? I smiled faintly. Because I learned that pain doesn't kill you. It just teaches you how to live without what you thought you needed. He nodded slowly, the words hitting him harder than he expected. Then his voice broke. Emily won't take my calls. She blocked my number. I lost my job after the firm found out about my debts. I have no one left. I stood quietly, then poured him a cup of tea. You still have the chance to be honest. Start there. He took the cup but didn't drink. His hands shook. Grace, I said terrible things to you. Things a man can't ever take back. Yes, I said. You did. He looked down, ashamed. I told you you'd survive because you were strong. But what I really meant was, I didn't want to face how much I needed you. You were the one who held us together. I was just too selfish to see it. Tears filled his eyes. Can you forgive me? I took a deep breath. Forgiveness isn't about you, Michael. It's about freeing myself. And I already did that a long time ago. He covered his face and began to sob, quiet, broken sobs that sounded like the man he used to be dying for good. I didn't reach for him. I didn't comfort him. I just let the silence do what it always does. He stayed there for a while, talking about his mistakes, about the guilt that haunted him. Then, before leaving, he whispered, You look peaceful. I am, I said. He nodded, defeated, and walked to the door. But before stepping out, he turned back and said, Tell Emily I love her. I shook my head. You tell her yourself, when you've learned what love really means. And with that, he left. A week later, I received a letter. Not an email. Not a text. A handwritten letter in Michael's old cursive, the same handwriting I once fell in love with. Grace, I don't expect you to answer. I just wanted to say thank you. For raising Emily. For saving Vanessa. For proving that real love doesn't humiliate, it heals. I've started a job at a local hardware store. It's small, but it's honest. Maybe that's what I needed. Something real again. Take care of yourself. Michael! I folded the letter and tucked it into a box under my bed. The same box that held Emily's baby shoes, her graduation photo, and the key to the house I once sold. That night, I lit a candle by the window, just like I used to when life felt heavier than my hands could hold. But this time I didn't cry. A month later, Emily came by with David. They framed a photo from the wedding, the one of her and me dancing. "Mom," she said, smiling, "we're putting this one on our wall. I want my kids to know what love really looks like." I held the frame, my throat tight. "And what does it look like to you?" She kissed my cheek. "It looks like you." That night, as I sat on my porch watching the stars, I thought about all the versions of myself I'd buried. The girl who waited, the wife who begged, the mother who feared she wasn't enough.